The weeks following the Krylos retreat were a mix of celebration and hard work. Humanity had won, but victory came at a steep price. Cities that once stood tall now lay in ruins, their streets filled with rubble and debris. The air was still, thick with smoke in some areas, and the scars of battle could be seen everywhere. Yet amidst the destruction, there was a sense of hope. People rolled up their sleeves and got to work, determined to rebuild what had been lost. In New York City, Emily Dawson joined a team of volunteers clearing away the wreckage. Her hands were blistered from hours of labor, but she didn't complain. Every brick moved, every piece of debris cleared, brought her city one step closer to recovery. Robert Simmons worked alongside her, his strength and determination inspiring those around him. Together they became symbols of resilience, showing others that even in the face of devastation, progress was possible. Across the globe, similar efforts were underway. In Tokyo, engineers used advanced machinery to clear fallen buildings, while in London, architects designed new structures that incorporated lessons learned from the invasion. Humanity wasn't just rebuilding, it was improving. Earth's cities were being transformed into fortresses, equipped with cutting-edge technology to defend against future threats. At the Pentagon, General Matthew Hayes oversaw the expansion of Project Titan. The orbital satellites that had played such a crucial role in the war were upgraded, their targeting systems refined to ensure precision. Laura Bennett led the effort, working tirelessly to analyze data and develop new strategies. She knew the Krylos might return someday, and she was determined to make sure humanity would be ready. President Daniel Carter addressed the nation regularly, urging unity and cooperation. "This is not just America's victory," he said during one speech. "It belongs to all of us, to every person on this planet who stood together and fought for our survival. Let's honor that spirit by building a better, stronger world." His words resonated deeply. Nations that had once been divided now worked side by side, sharing resources and knowledge. Scientists collaborated across borders, pooling their expertise to study the remnants of Krylos technology. What they discovered was astonishing. Alien materials far stronger and lighter than anything humanity had ever created, energy sources capable of powering entire cities, and weapons systems that defied conventional physics. These breakthroughs promised to revolutionize life on Earth, but they also served as a reminder of how close humanity had come to annihilation. Colonel Ethan Blake returned to active duty, leading training exercises for pilots who would operate the next generation of experimental aircraft. These planes, based on the prototypes used during the war, were faster, more agile, and armed with advanced weaponry. Ethan took pride in mentoring younger pilots, passing on the skills and experiences he had gained during the conflict. He often spoke about the importance of teamwork and adaptability, emphasizing that humanity's greatest strength lay in its ability to work together. Lieutenant Sarah Miller found solace in her work. After the emotional toll of her mission aboard the captured Krylos vessel, she threw herself into relief efforts, helping coordinate aid for survivors. She traveled to affected regions, meeting people who had lost everything but refused to give up. Their courage inspired her, reminding her why she had risked her life in the first place. One day, while visiting a shelter in Chicago, Sarah met a young boy named Jake. He had lost his parents during the invasion and was struggling to cope. Sarah spent hours talking to him, sharing stories of bravery and resilience. By the time she left, Jake's eyes sparkled with newfound hope. Moments like these reminded Sarah that the war wasn't just about defeating an enemy, it was about protecting the future. Meanwhile, Alex Rivera continued to advocate for global cooperation. His organization, which he called Unity Tech, brought together hackers, engineers, and scientists from around the world. They worked on projects ranging from early warning systems to sustainable energy solutions, ensuring that humanity would be better prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. Alex believed that the key to survival was collaboration, and he dedicated himself to fostering connections between nations. As months passed, signs of recovery began to emerge. New buildings rose from the ashes of old ones, their designs sleek and modern. Streets were repaved, parks replanted, and schools reopened. Life slowly returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after such a cataclysmic event. But the war had changed everyone in profound ways. For Emily, it had ignited a passion for activism. She started a community group focused on disaster preparedness, teaching people how to respond in emergencies. Robert channeled his energy into urban planning, designing safer, more resilient cities. Both felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing they were contributing to a brighter future. Even Commander Vrax, far away in the depths of space, couldn't forget the lessons of the invasion. As he faced judgment from his superiors, he recounted the events on Earth with a mix of frustration and admiration. The humans had been clever, resourceful, and fearless, qualities that made them dangerous adversaries. Though the Krylos Empire vowed never to underestimate Earth again, Vrax knew that humanity's victory had sent a message to the stars. Earth was not a planet to be trifled with. Back on Earth, celebrations marked the anniversary of the victory. Cities lit up with fireworks, and crowds gathered in public squares to honor those who had fought and died. Speeches were given, songs were sung, and tears flowed freely. It was a moment of collective reflection, a chance to remember the sacrifices made and to celebrate the resilience that had carried humanity through. Ethan attended a ceremony at the White House, where he and other heroes of the war were honored. Standing beside Sarah, Laura, and Alex, he felt a deep sense of pride. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, not because of superior technology or numbers, but because of their courage, ingenuity, and determination. As the ceremony ended, Ethan looked out over the crowd, his heart swelling with emotion. Humanity had proven itself capable of greatness. The scars of the invasion would always remain, but they served as a reminder of what had been overcome and what could be achieved when people came together. Later that night, Ethan stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, gazing at the illuminated Washington Monument in the distance. Beside him, Sarah and Alex shared quiet conversation, their voices soft but hopeful. Emily and Robert joined them, bringing coffee and snacks for everyone. For a moment, there was peace, a rare and precious thing after so much turmoil. "We've been through hell," Robert said finally, breaking the silence. "But we're still here, and we're stronger than ever." Emily nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "Yeah. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it. Together." The group exchanged smiles, their bond forged in the fires of war. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they also knew that humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged triumphant. That knowledge gave them hope, a belief that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would find a way to overcome them, as the stars twinkled above. Casting a gentle glow over the recovering city, the group lingered a little longer, savoring the moment. The war was over, and though the scars remained, so did the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Humanity had stared into the abyss and refused to back down, and that, more than anything, was worth celebrating. The Krylos fleet had retreated, leaving Earth battered but victorious. The skies were no longer filled with the hum of alien engines or the glow of energy beams. Instead, they were quiet, save for the occasional roar of a jet passing overhead as humanity's forces patrolled the atmosphere. The war was over, but the scars it left behind would take years to heal. Commander Vrax, injured and humiliated, sat alone in what remained of his command ship. His once proud fleet had been reduced to a fraction of its former strength, and he knew he would face consequences upon returning to the Krylos Empire. Failure was not tolerated among his people, and Vrax dreaded the punishment that awaited him. Yet, even in defeat, he couldn't deny the truth. Humanity had proven itself to be far more formidable than anyone could have imagined. Back on Earth, the mood was one of cautious celebration. Cities lay in ruins, their streets littered with debris and their buildings crumbling from the relentless attacks. Fires still burned in some areas, sending plumes of smoke into the air. Yet amidst the destruction there was hope. People gathered in public squares, lighting candles and singing songs to honor those who had fought and died. The sense of unity was palpable, as if the shared struggle had brought humanity closer together than ever before. In New York City, Emily Dawson stood on a rooftop overlooking the skyline. The city she loved was unrecognizable, its towering skyscrapers now jagged skeletons of steel and glass. But Emily didn't feel despair. She felt determination. She had survived the invasion, and now it was time to rebuild. Beside her, Robert. Simmons gazed at the horizon, his expression thoughtful. "We've got a long road ahead of us," Robert said, breaking the silence. "But we'll get through it. We always do." Emily nodded, her eyes shining with resolve. "Yeah, and this, time, will make sure we're ready if something like this ever happens again." Across the globe, similar conversations were taking place. In Tokyo, survivors cleared rubble from the streets, working side by side despite language barriers and cultural differences. In London, volunteers distributed food and supplies to those in need, their efforts coordinated by local leaders who had stepped up during the crisis. Humanity was resilient, and even in the face of overwhelming loss, people found ways to support one another. At the Pentagon, General Matthew Hayes convened a meeting to assess the aftermath of the invasion. Military leaders, scientists, and government officials gathered around the table, their faces weary but determined. Dr. Laura Bennett joined the discussion via video link, her voice steady as she outlined the next steps. "We've won the battle," Laura began, "but the war has exposed vulnerabilities we can't ignore. If we want to prevent another invasion, we need to invest in our defenses and in understanding the technology we've encountered." General Hayes nodded in agreement. Project Titan was instrumental in turning the tide. We need to expand it to improve our orbital defenses, develop better weapons, and ensure our satellites are always operational. President Daniel Carter, who had joined the meeting remotely, spoke next. "This experience has shown us that humanity is stronger when we work together. Every nation played a role in this victory, and every nation will benefit from what we've learned. Let's use this moment to build a better future, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come." The room erupted in applause, a rare moment of optimism after weeks of fear and uncertainty. Plans were made to share technological advancements with allied nations, ensuring that Earth's defenses would be globally coordinated. Laura and her team were tasked with analyzing the wreckage of Krylos ships, hoping to reverse engineer even more advanced systems. It was clear that humanity's survival depended on staying one step ahead of potential threats. Colonel Ethan Blake returned home to his family, finally able to embrace his wife and children after weeks of separation. His uniform was worn and stained, but his heart was full. As he held his youngest son in his arms, Ethan reflected on everything he had witnessed. The bravery of his fellow pilots, the ingenuity of the scientists, and the resilience of ordinary citizens. It all reminded him of why he had chosen to serve in the first place. "I'm proud of you," his wife whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us." Ethan shook his head, his voice soft but firm. "It wasn't just me, it was everyone. Humanity did this." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Sarah Miller found herself struggling to adjust to life after the war. Her mission aboard the captured Krylos vessel had been hailed as heroic, but Sarah couldn't shake the memories of the chaos and destruction she had witnessed. She spent her days helping coordinate relief efforts, channeling her energy into rebuilding rather than dwelling on the past. Still, There were moments when the weight of it all threatened to overwhelm her. One evening, as she walked through a park littered with makeshift memorials, Sarah stopped to read the names etched onto a wall of remembrance. Each name represented someone who had lost their life during the invasion. A parent, a sibling, a friend. Sarah placed a hand on the cold stone, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for those who had sacrificed everything. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "We won't forget." In the world of science and technology, Alex Rivera became an unlikely celebrity. His coding skills had played a crucial role in disrupting Krylos communications and enhancing Earth's satellite targeting systems. Reporters flocked to interview him, eager to learn about the young man who had helped turn the tide of the war. But Alex remained humble, deflecting praise and emphasizing the importance of teamwork. "It wasn't just me," he told a journalist during one interview. "There were thousands of people working behind the scenes, hackers, engineers, scientists. We all did our part." Inspired by the global response to the invasion, Alex founded an organization dedicated to fostering international cooperation in technology and defense. He believed that humanity's greatest strength lay in its diversity and collaboration, and he wanted to ensure that the lessons learned from the war would never be forgotten. As the weeks turned into months, the process of rebuilding gained momentum. Construction crews worked tirelessly to repair damaged infrastructure, while architects designed new buildings that incorporated cutting-edge materials and technologies. Schools reopened, businesses resumed operations, and communities came together to celebrate milestones large and small. In space, Earth's orbital satellites continued to monitor the stars, scanning for any sign of another threat. The Krylos had promised not to return, but humanity knew better than to trust such assurances blindly. Laura and her team worked around the clock to improve the satellite's capabilities, ensuring that Earth would never again be caught off guard. The war had changed everyone in profound ways. For Emily, it had ignited a passion for activism. She began volunteering with organizations focused on disaster preparedness and community resilience, determined to help others survive whatever challenges might arise. Robert, too, found purpose in the aftermath, using his skills to train others in emergency response and urban planning. Even Commander Vrax, far away in the depths of space, couldn't forget the lessons of the invasion. As he faced judgment from his superiors, he recounted the events on Earth with a mix of awe and frustration. The humans had been clever, resourceful, and fearless, qualities that made them dangerous adversaries. Though the Krylos Empire would likely attempt another conquest someday, Vrax knew they would approach Earth with caution. Back on the blue planet, life slowly returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after such a cataclysmic event. The scars of the invasion would always remain, etched into the landscape and the hearts of those who had lived through it. But humanity had proven something invaluable. They could endure, adapt, and overcome even the greatest of challenges. As the sun set over a rebuilt section of New York City, Emily and Robert stood side by side, watching the horizon glow with warm hues of orange and pink. The city was still healing, but there was beauty in the process, in the way people came together to create something new from the ashes of the old. "We did it," Emily said softly, her voice filled with pride. "We really did it." Robert smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Yeah, and we'll keep doing it, whatever comes next." And with that, they turned away from the sunset, ready to face whatever the future held. The victory over the Krylos flagship sent shockwaves through their fleet. Without their central command hub, the alien ships became disorganized and vulnerable. Some tried to flee, retreating into the depths of space, while others fought desperately to hold their ground. But humanity was no longer on the defensive. With the tide turned in their favor, Earth's forces launched a full-scale counterattack. Colonel Ethan Blake led the charge, his squadron soaring through the skies with renewed energy. The experimental jets, powered by reverse-engineered alien technology, proved to be unmatched in speed and agility. Ethan and his pilots weaved through the chaos of battle, picking off Krylos fighters one by one. Each successful strike boosted their morale, fueling their determination to see the fight through to the end. On the ground, civilians began to emerge from shelters, their faces filled with a mix of relief and cautious optimism. In New York City, Emily Dawson stepped out onto the streets for the first time since the invasion began. The scene was devastating. Entire blocks reduced to rubble, fires still smoldering in the distance. But there was also a sense of hope in the air. People gathered in small groups, sharing stories of survival and offering what little they had to help those in need. Robert Simmons joined a team of volunteers working to clear debris and search for survivors. His hands were blistered from hours of labor, but he didn't stop. Every life saved felt like a small triumph against the overwhelming destruction left behind by the Krylos. As he worked, he couldn't help but think about how close humanity had come to losing everything. The thought made him push harder, determined to rebuild what had been lost. High above the planet, Dr. Laura Bennett monitored the ongoing battle from her command center. The orbital satellites continued to rain plasma fire down on the remaining Krylos ships, forcing them into retreat or destruction. Laura adjusted targeting algorithms in real time, ensuring maximum efficiency. Her calm demeanor masked the exhaustion she felt. She hadn't slept in days, but stopping now wasn't an option, not when so much was still at stake. President Daniel Carter addressed the nation once again, his voice steady despite the fatigue etched on his face. "We have shown the Krylos and the universe that humanity will not bow to tyranny," he declared. "Our resolve is unbreakable, and our spirit cannot be crushed. Today we stand united as never before." The words resonated deeply with people around the world. From Tokyo to London, crowds gathered in public squares, cheering for the soldiers and scientists who had turned the tide of the war. Flags were raised, songs were sung, and tears flowed freely. For the first time in days, laughter could be heard amidst the ruins. But the war wasn't over yet. While many Krylos ships had fled, some remained, attempting to regroup and mount a final resistance. These stragglers posed a significant threat, especially to coastal cities where underwater drones were still engaging hidden submarines. Beneath, the waves' massive explosions rocked the ocean floor as Earth's drones closed in on their targets. The Krylos subs, though advanced, were no match for the relentless assault. Lieutenant Sarah Miller and her infiltration team returned to base as heroes. Their daring mission aboard the captured Krylos vessel had been instrumental in disabling the flagship's power core. Sarah stood quietly as reporters clamored for interviews, deflecting praise and insisting that the victory belonged to everyone involved. She knew the true heroes were the countless men and women who had risked, and in some cases lost, their lives during the invasion. In space, unmanned fighter drones piloted by artificial intelligence swarmed the remaining Krylos cruisers. Designed for zero-gravity combat, these drones moved with precision, exploiting weaknesses in the enemy's defenses. Explosions lit up the sky as more Krylos ships fell, their crews unable to adapt to the relentless onslaught. Commander Vrax, stranded aboard a damaged cruiser, watched in silent fury as his empire unraveled before his eyes. Ethan and his squadron targeted key vessels within the Krylos fleet, focusing on supply ships and carriers. By cutting off their resources, they hoped to force the invaders into surrender. The Krylos fighters put up fierce resistance, but without centralized leadership, their efforts lacked cohesion. One by one, their ships were destroyed or driven away, leaving Earth's defenders firmly in control. Back on the ground, ordinary citizens played a crucial role in the war effort. Hackers around the globe joined forces to disrupt Krylos communications, jamming signals and creating false data streams that confused the remaining enemy forces. Among them was Alex Rivera, a young programmer whose code allowed Earth's satellites to predict and intercept incoming attacks. Working tirelessly from his basement apartment, Alex communicated directly with Laura's team, providing critical updates that helped refine the satellite targeting systems. As the battle raged on, humanity's ingenuity shone brighter than ever. Engineers deployed massive carriers hidden beneath the sea, launching thousands of troops equipped with advanced mecha suits. These suits, powered by fusion reactors, gave soldiers unmatched strength and speed, enabling them to board and sabotage enemy vessels. Inside the Krylos ships, these armored warriors fought fiercely, overwhelming their opponents with superior tactics and firepower. Laura coordinated the global response from her command center, ensuring that every resource was utilized effectively. Her calm leadership inspired confidence in everyone around her. When news arrived that Sarah's EMP strike had successfully disabled the flagship's core, Laura allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. Humanity had pulled off the impossible, not just once, but repeatedly. Commander Vrax, however, refused to admit defeat. Despite the crippling losses his fleet had suffered, he ordered a desperate counterattack. A group of Krylos cruisers descended toward Earth, targeting major cities in a last-ditch effort to break humanity's spirit. General Hayes immediately mobilized all available forces to intercept them. Fighter jets, drones, and mecha units converged on the descending ships, determined to stop them before they reached their objectives. Ethan led the aerial assault, his jet weaving through enemy fire as he guided his squadron toward the lead cruiser. The ship loomed large in the sky, its weapons blazing as it attempted to fend off the attackers. Ethan locked onto its engines and fired a missile, scoring a direct hit. Flames erupted from the cruiser's hull, sending it spiraling toward the atmosphere. Cheers erupted among the pilots as the massive vessel broke apart mid-air. On the ground, Emily and Robert joined the crowds watching the spectacle unfold. The sight of the burning cruiser falling from the sky filled them with awe and relief. For the first time in days, they allowed themselves to believe that the nightmare might finally be ending. By nightfall, the Krylos fleet was in tatters. Only a handful of ships remained operational, and even those were severely damaged. Commander Vrax, gravely injured but alive, transmitted a message of surrender. "To the inhabitants of Earth," he said, his voice strained but formal, "you have proven yourselves worthy adversaries. We shall withdraw and leave your planet in peace. Do not mistake this for weakness. We will remember this day." President Carter accepted the terms of surrender on behalf of humanity, though he made it clear that any future aggression would be met with swift retaliation. The surviving Krylos ships limped away from Earth, disappearing into the void of space. Silence fell across the battlefield as both sides took stock of the devastation. In the aftermath, the world began the long process of healing. Cities lay in ruins, and millions had lost their homes, or worse, their lives. Yet amidst the sorrow, there was a profound sense of unity. People came together to rebuild, driven by the knowledge that they had faced the greatest threat in human history and emerged victorious. Ethan returned home to his family, forever changed by the events he had witnessed. Laura continued her work, pushing the boundaries of science to ensure Earth would never again be caught unprepared. And Alex, hailed as a hero, used his newfound fame to advocate for global cooperation, urging nations to unite in the face of future challenges. Though scarred by the invasion, Earth emerged stronger than ever. The Krylos had underestimated humanity's resilience, courage, and ingenuity. They would not make that mistake again. The morning sun broke through the haze of smoke and ash, casting a pale light over the battered cities of Earth. The battle against the Krylos had raged for hours, and while humanity had managed to hold its ground, the cost was staggering. Skyscrapers lay in ruins, streets were littered with debris, and the air was thick with the smell of burning metal and charred earth. Yet amidst the destruction, there was a glimmer of hope. The humans had proven they could fight back, and that knowledge fueled their determination to keep going. Commander Vrax paced the bridge of his damaged flagship, his sharp features twisted in frustration. The loss of the command center had left him scrambling to regain control of his fleet. His subordinates worked tirelessly to re-establish communication with the remaining ships, but the humans had disrupted their systems so thoroughly that coordination was nearly impossible. Vrax clenched his fists as he stared out at the battlefield. He had underestimated Earth's defenders, and now he was paying the price. "We need to strike back," Vrax growled, turning to his second-in-command. "If we don't act soon, the humans will think they've won." His second-in-command nodded nervously. "What do you suggest, Commander?" Vrax's eyes narrowed. "Target their cities directly. Show them the full power of the Krylos Empire. If they won't surrender willingly, we'll crush them into submission." Back on Earth, General Matthew Hayes received word of the Krylos's new strategy. Intelligence reports indicated that the aliens were preparing a massive assault on major population centers. The goal was clear: break humanity's spirit by targeting civilians. Hayes knew they couldn't let that happen. He called an emergency meeting at the Pentagon, where Dr. Laura Bennett and other key figures gathered to discuss their options. "We can't let them destroy another city," Hayes said, his voice firm. "We need to hit them before they hit us." Laura nodded, her mind racing. She had been analyzing data from the satellites and noticed something crucial. The Krylos ships relied heavily on a central power core located on their flagship. If they could disable that core, the entire fleet would be vulnerable. But getting close enough to strike it wouldn't be easy. "We have one shot at this," Laura explained, pointing to a holographic projection of the flagship. "Their power. Core is shielded, but if we can generate an electromagnetic pulse strong enough, we might be able to take it offline." Hayes frowned. "How do we get close enough to deliver the EMP?" "That's where Lieutenant Sarah Miller comes in," Laura replied. She turned to the young officer standing nearby. Sarah was a skilled infiltrator, known for her ability to operate under extreme pressure. Her mission, if she accepted it, would be one of the most dangerous tasks ever attempted. Sarah listened intently as Laura outlined the plan. A small team would board a captured Krylos vessel, reprogram its systems to emit the EMP, and then pilot it into the heart of the enemy fleet. It was risky, but it was their best chance to turn the tide of the war. "I'm in," Sarah said without hesitation. Her voice was calm, but there was a fire in her eyes. She understood the stakes, and she was ready to do whatever it took to protect her planet. While Sarah prepared for the mission, Colonel Ethan Blake led his squadron in a series of diversionary attacks. Their goal was to draw the Krylos's attention away from the flagship, giving Sarah's team the time they needed to complete their objective. The skies above Earth erupted in chaos as human fighters clashed with alien ships. Explosions lit up the horizon, and the roar of engines filled the air. Ethan's jet darted through the fray, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. His squadron had been reduced to just a handful of planes, but they fought with everything they had. Each pilot knew that failure wasn't an option. They were Earth's last line of defense, and they weren't about to give up. On the ground, Emily Dawson and Robert Simmons continued their journey through the subway tunnels. They had found temporary safety among the survivors, but the constant tremors and distant explosions reminded them that the war was far from over. Emily sat quietly, hugging her knees to her chest, while Robert paced back and forth, unable to sit still. "What happens if they win?" Emily asked softly, breaking the silence. Robert stopped pacing and looked at her. His expression was grim, but his voice was steady. "They won't. Humanity has faced worse than this. We always find a way to survive." Emily nodded, though doubt lingered in her mind. She wanted to believe Robert, but the scale of the invasion was overwhelming. Still, she clung to the hope that someone, somewhere, was fighting for them. Meanwhile, Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, another phase of humanity's defense system sprang to life. Massive underwater drones emerged from hidden bases, their sleek forms cutting through the water with precision. These drones were equipped with torpedoes, designed to track and destroy Krylos submarines lurking beneath the waves. As they launched their attack, the ocean became a battleground, with explosions sending shockwaves rippling across the surface. Back in space, Sarah's team boarded the captured Krylos vessel and began their work. The ship was eerily silent, its corridors dimly lit and filled with strange, humming machinery. Sarah moved cautiously, her weapon at the ready, while her teammates worked to reprogram the ship's systems. Time was running out, and every second counted. As they neared the flagship, alarms blared throughout the Krylos fleet. Commander Vrax realized too late what was happening. "It's a trap!" he shouted, ordering his ships to intercept the rogue vessel. But it was already too late. Sarah activated the EMP, sending a powerful pulse surging through the flagship's shields. The lights flickered, and the hum of the ship's engines died instantly. Chaos erupted as the flagship drifted helplessly, its defenses completely disabled. The rest of the fleet faltered, their systems disrupted by the sudden loss of central control. In the skies above Earth, Ethan and his squadron seized the opportunity. With the Krylos fleet in disarray, they launched a final, devastating assault. Plasma cannons fired from orbit, striking down enemy ships one after another. The tide of the battle had shifted decisively in humanity's favor. Commander Vrax watched, in disbelief, as his once mighty armada crumbled around him. For the first time, he felt fear. The humans had not only resisted, they had outsmarted him. He barked orders to his crew, demanding an immediate retreat, but it was too late. The flagship was surrounded, and escape was impossible. As the flagship exploded in a brilliant burst of light, cheers erupted across Earth. Civilians who had been hiding in shelters ventured outside, their faces lighting up with relief and joy. Soldiers embraced one another, tears streaming down their faces. Against all odds, humanity had won. General Hayes addressed the nation from the White House, his voice filled with pride and gratitude. Today, we proved that no matter how great the challenge, humanity will stand together and fight for our future. This victory belongs to all of us. In the aftermath, Sarah's team returned safely, hailed as heroes. Ethan's squadron landed to a hero's welcome, their planes battered but victorious. Laura monitored the cleanup efforts from her command center, exhausted but satisfied. Humanity had faced its greatest test and emerged stronger than ever. But even as celebrations erupted worldwide, everyone knew the scars of the invasion would take time to heal. Cities needed rebuilding, lives needed repairing, and trust needed restoring. Yet through it all, there was a renewed sense of unity. Humanity had stared into the abyss and refused to back down, and that, more than anything, was worth celebrating. The first wave of the Krylos attack had been brutal, but humanity's response had been unexpected. The alien fleet, once thought invincible, now faced a challenge it hadn't anticipated. Earth's orbital satellites, armed with plasma cannons, continued to fire relentlessly, targeting one Krylos cruiser after another. Explosions lit up the sky as ships disintegrated into fiery clouds of debris. Yet, despite the initial success, the battle was far from over. Commander Vrax stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the chaos unfold with growing anger. His sharp, angular features twisted in frustration as he observed the destruction of his ships. Never before had a species resisted so fiercely, or so effectively. The humans were proving to be more than mere insects. They were clever, resourceful, and dangerous. But Vrax refused to believe they could win. He would not allow it. "Deploy the second wave," Vrax ordered, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "Focus on their orbital defenses. Destroy those satellites." His subordinates scrambled to carry out his commands, relaying orders to the remaining ships in the fleet. Moments later, dozens of smaller vessels detached from the main fleet, descending toward Earth's atmosphere. Their mission was clear: eliminate the source of humanity's newfound strength. On the ground, Colonel Ethan Blake watched the new wave of enemy ships approach. His squadron had barely survived the first assault, and their fuel reserves were running low. Still, there was no time to rest. Ethan knew that if the Krylos destroyed the satellites, humanity's chances of survival would plummet. He radioed back to Mission Control, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his eyes. "They're coming for the satellites," Ethan said. "We need to hold them off." Dr. Laura Bennett listened intently from her command center. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she adjusted the targeting algorithms of the satellites, trying to anticipate the Krylos' next move. She nodded to the communications officer beside her. "Tell Colonel Blake we'll do everything we can to support him. If they reach the satellites, we're finished." Ethan's squadron took to the skies once again, intercepting the Krylos fighters before they could reach the satellites. The battle was intense, with both sides exchanging fire at breakneck speeds. Ethan's jet dodged energy blasts while returning fire, his movements precise and calculated. Around him, other pilots fought valiantly, their planes weaving through the chaos like birds in a storm. One by one, the Krylos fighters fell, but they were relentless. For every ship Ethan's squadron destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The odds were stacked against them, but they couldn't afford to retreat. Every second counted. Meanwhile, in New York City, civilians struggled to survive amidst the devastation. Emily Dawson and Robert Simmons found themselves trapped in the same shelter, along with a dozen others. The building shook violently as explosions rocked the streets outside. Smoke seeped through cracks in the walls, and the air was thick with fear. "We can't stay here forever," Robert said, glancing at the door. "If we don't find a safer place soon, we're done for." Emily nodded, clutching a flashlight tightly in her hand. "What about the subway tunnels? They might offer better protection." Robert hesitated, then agreed. "It's worth a shot. Let's move quickly." Together, they led the group out of the shelter and into the chaos of the city. The streets were littered with rubble, and the sound of distant gunfire echoed in the air. They moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows and avoiding open areas. At one point, they had to duck behind a pile of debris as a Krylos patrol passed. Overhead, its searchlights scanning the ground below. Back in the skies, Ethan's squadron was running out of options. Their ammunition was nearly depleted, and several pilots had been forced to eject after sustaining heavy damage. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, reinforcements arrived. Dozens of experimental aircraft soared into view, their sleek designs unlike anything the Krylos had seen before. These were the prototypes Laura had mentioned earlier, fighters powered by reverse-engineered alien technology. Faster, more agile, and equipped with advanced weaponry, they turned the tide of the battle almost instantly. The Krylos fighters, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of these new adversaries, began to falter. Ethan let out a sigh of relief as he watched the tide shift. "About time," he muttered under his breath, his lips curling into a faint smile. He signaled to the other pilots to regroup and press the advantage. Together, they pushed the Krylos back, forcing them to retreat. Space. The satellites continued their relentless assault. Laura monitored the situation closely, her focus unwavering. She noticed something unusual, a pattern in the way the Krylos ships were moving. It wasn't random, it was coordinated, almost like a dance. She realized they were protecting something, a central hub within the fleet. "That must be their command center," Laura said aloud, pointing to the screen. "If we can take it out, we might cripple their entire operation." She relayed the information to Ethan, who immediately understood the importance of the target. "Copy that," he replied. "We'll do whatever it takes." With the satellites providing covering fire, Ethan's squadron launched a daring assault on the Krylos command center. The enemy ships tried to intercept them, but the human fighters were too fast. Using the agility of their prototype jets, Ethan and his team slipped past the defenses and unleashed a barrage of missiles at the command center. The explosion was massive, sending shockwaves through the fleet. Several nearby ships were caught in the blast, their hulls rupturing as they spiraled out of control. On the ground, people paused to watch the spectacle, their hearts lifting at the sight of the enemy's vulnerability. Commander Vrax felt the impact of the attack deep in his core. His command center was gone, and with it, much of his ability to coordinate the invasion. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Could the humans actually win this war? But Vrax was not ready to surrender. He barked orders to his remaining forces, instructing them to regroup and prepare for a counterattack. The humans had struck a significant blow, but the battle was far from over. The Krylos still outnumbered them, and Vrax intended to use that advantage to crush the resistance once and for all. As night fell, both sides prepared for the next phase of the conflict. Humanity had proven itself capable of fighting back, but the cost of victory was mounting. Cities lay in ruins, and countless lives had been lost. Emily and Robert finally reached the subway tunnels where they joined hundreds of other survivors seeking refuge. The air was damp and cold, but it offered a sense of safety, at least for now. Ethan returned to base, his body aching from hours of combat. He sat alone in the cockpit of his jet, staring at the stars above. Despite the exhaustion weighing him down, he felt a flicker of hope. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, and somehow managed to prevail. This time would be different. Laura remained at her station, analyzing data and planning the next move. She knew the fight was far from over, but she also knew that humanity had something the Krylos lacked: resilience. No matter how dire the situation became, people always found a way to keep going. For now, the battle hung in the balance. Both sides had suffered losses, but neither was willing to give up. The Krylos Empire had underestimated humanity, and that mistake might prove fatal. As the sun rose on a new day, the stage was set for the next chapter in this epic struggle. The sun hung low in the sky over New York City, casting long shadows across the bustling streets. People moved about their day, unaware that something extraordinary was about to happen. Cars honked, pedestrians crossed busy intersections, and the faint hum of life filled the air. But then everything changed. A deep rumble echoed through the city, growing louder with each passing second. The ground trembled slightly, causing people to stop and look up. At first they saw nothing unusual, just the familiar blue expanse of the sky. Then, like a scene from an old science fiction movie, massive shapes began to appear. Enormous ships descended from above, blotting out the sunlight as they hovered silently over the skyline. These weren't planes or satellites. These were alien vessels, sleek and metallic, bristling with weapons and glowing with strange lights. Panic spread quickly. Cell phones buzzed with alerts, and social media erupted with videos and photos of the ships. The news channels scrambled to cover the event, but no one had answers. Within minutes, similar reports poured in from cities all over the world. Tokyo, London, Sydney, Johannesburg, all of them were under the shadow of these colossal machines. It wasn't just New York. This was global. From one of the largest ships hovering above Manhattan, a voice boomed. It wasn't human. It was cold, mechanical, and carried an edge of authority. "Attention, inhabitants of Earth," it said. "We are the Krylos Empire. Your planet has been selected for integration into our dominion. Resistance is futile. Surrender now, or face annihilation." The message repeated itself in multiple languages, ensuring everyone understood. Some people froze in fear, while others ran for shelter. Parents grabbed their children and drivers abandoned their cars in the middle of the road. For a moment, chaos reigned supreme. Yet amid the confusion, there were also whispers of defiance. Humanity had faced threats before, and though this, One seemed insurmountable. Many refused to believe it was the end. At the Pentagon, General Matthew Hayes stood at the head of a crowded conference room. Maps, screens, and holographic projections covered every available surface. Military leaders, scientists, and government officials sat around the table, their faces grim. They had known an invasion was theoretically possible, but no one had expected it to happen so suddenly, or on such a scale. "This isn't just an attack," said Dr. Laura Bennett, a physicist who had spent years working on advanced defense systems. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses. "These ships are far more advanced than anything we've ever encountered. Their energy signatures alone suggest technology centuries ahead of ours." General Hayes nodded. "We need options, and fast. If what you're saying is true, then conventional weapons won't cut it." Laura hesitated before speaking again. "There might be hope. Remember Project Titan?" She glanced around the room, waiting for recognition to dawn on her colleagues' faces. Project Titan was a classified initiative launched decades ago, born out of fears that humanity might someday encounter hostile extraterrestrials. Most dismissed it as science fiction, but Laura had always believed it could save lives if the worst happened. "Project Titan?" asked President Daniel Carter, who had joined the meeting via video link. His expression was weary but resolute. "I thought that was shelved years ago due to budget cuts." "It was scaled back," Laura admitted, "but not entirely scrapped. We have orbital satellites equipped with experimental plasma cannons. They're still in testing, but they're operational. If we can coordinate their use effectively, we might stand a chance." President Carter leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Do it. Whatever resources you need, you'll get them. I want those satellites online immediately." As orders were issued and plans set into motion, the reality of the situation weighed heavily on everyone involved. Outside the secure walls of the Pentagon, ordinary citizens grappled with their own fears. In New York, a young woman named Emily Dawson clutched her phone tightly, trying to call her family in Chicago. The lines were jammed, and frustration welled up inside her. Nearby, a man named Robert Simmons helped an elderly neighbor into a nearby building, offering reassurance even though he felt none himself. Meanwhile, high above the earth, Commander Vrax of the Krylos Empire watched the unfolding drama with detached curiosity. To him, humanity was little more than an insect, a primitive species unworthy of mercy. He had led countless invasions, conquering planets with ease. Earth would be no different. Or so he thought. Back at the Pentagon, Laura worked feverishly alongside her team. The satellites were designed to operate autonomously, but fine-tuning their targeting algorithms required human oversight. Every second counted. As the clock ticked down toward the Krylos' deadline, tension mounted. Would the satellites be ready in time? Could they really hold off an enemy that appeared unstoppable? On the streets below, Colonel Ethan Blake prepared. His squadron for battle. A decorated pilot with years of experience, he knew the odds were against them. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had one last card to play. Decades earlier, Earth's scientists had secretly reverse-engineered alien technology recovered from a crashed spacecraft. Though untested in combat, the resulting prototypes promised unparalleled speed and firepower. Ethan climbed into the cockpit of his fighter jet, running through pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency. Beside him, other pilots did the same, their faces masks of determination. None of them spoke much. They didn't need to. Each understood the stakes. If they failed, billions would die. Above them, the Krylos fleet loomed ominously. Energy beams lanced down from the ships, striking random targets across the city. Skyscrapers crumbled, sending plumes of smoke billowing into the air. Fires raged unchecked, consuming entire blocks. Yet amidst the destruction, something remarkable occurred. Without warning, streaks of blue light shot upward from seemingly nowhere. The plasma cannons mounted on Earth's satellites had come online, firing with pinpoint accuracy. Several Krylos cruisers exploded in brilliant bursts of flame, sending debris tumbling toward the atmosphere. Shock rippled through the Imperial ranks as their supposedly impenetrable shields faltered under the unexpected assault. For the first time, doubt crept into Commander Vrax's mind. How could a supposedly primitive species possess such devastating weaponry? He barked orders to his subordinates, demanding retaliation. But already the tide of battle was shifting. In the skies above New York, Ethan's squadron engaged the enemy fighters. Outnumbered and outgunned, they relied on speed and strategy to survive. One by one, Krylos ships fell, their pilots unprepared for the ferocity of Earth's defenders. Back at Mission Control, Laura monitored the fight closely, adjusting satellite trajectories to maximize damage. Her heart raced as she watched the data stream in. Against all odds, humanity was holding its own. Yet even as victory seemed within reach, the cost of war became painfully clear. Buildings lay in ruins, and countless lives had been lost. Emily Dawson huddled in a makeshift shelter, tears streaming down her face as she listened to distant explosions. Robert Simmons patrolled the streets, helping whoever he could, but the weight of despair pressed heavily on his shoulders. This was no ordinary conflict. It was a fight for survival. High above, Commander Vrax gritted his teeth in frustration. Never before had he faced such resistance. The humans were proving to be far more resourceful than anticipated, but the battle was far from over. The Krylos still held the advantage in numbers, and Vrax was determined to crush this rebellious species once and for all. As night fell over the ravaged city, both sides regrouped, preparing for the next phase of the war. Humanity had struck a blow, but the real test was yet to come.